See, freedom and people of hell yeah, freedom and people of need, yeah, yeah, freedom and people of want, freedom and people of need, yeah, yeah, freedom and people of want, freedom and people of need, yeah, yeah, freedom and people of want, freedom and people of need, yeah, yeah, real man a road, now bow wolf in a tree grand a road, now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road, me say yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in no tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road. Ready for broke every chain. The when you free up the people, levitate. Jamaica member you ever great. I feel burn up the fire upon every snake. Me give thanks in every way. God's
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another edition of UIC President. This is Patterson, President of UIC Jamaica. I'm very pleased to be with you tonight. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, actually, the education system. But unfortunately, it's not a very pleasant news that we have to talk about. However, it's very important that we look at what's happening in Jamaica and understand what's happening and what we need to do about it if we're going to have a new and better Jamaica. So let me say a warm good night again to all of you who will be joining us from around the world, wherever you are. I wish you have a good week today and that you're prepared for, some discussion on this vital topic of our education system and why teachers are leaving in droves for greener pastures. I read something from the Gleaner today. It went like this. The Education Minister, Favour Williams, says 167 teachers have resigned from the public school system since July, although it's not clear whether all have left for foreign jobs. She says the number could change as more updates come in from school administrators. Williams says 964 specialist teachers have finished training and are available for the public education system. The teacher covers or the teachers cover areas such as chemistry, computer science, English language, and mathematics. 121 of the teachers are on a government program with a 5-year bond. What she's saying, in effect, is that as far as she's aware, 167 teachers have resigned, but she has 964 specialists coming in, and there are 121 of those specialists who are bonded for 5 years. So, in other words, we should not have a problem. That's what she's saying. Of course, we've heard from principals and other administrators that there is a problem. In fact, let us hear from one such person who had a view of the issue and could give us some insight, as I think he's the what you call it now, the current president of the um, uh, what principals. What is he? What is he? Let's see. Let's see what his credentials are as we take a look and listen to him. Let's take a look here. Hold on, listen. If I can just get that up and running.
President of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, Vern Wright, says many principals are bracing for the mass resignation by the end of August. This as numerous recruiters from overseas have intensified their efforts to employ Jamaica's teachers to migrate for work. Wright says even though the numbers are currently unspecified, the number of teachers leaving will be significant.
We are signing recommendations and we are signing up documents for persons, but they haven't said anything to us. But what is required of the schools overseas is that their principal actually sign off on things for them. So you know by inference that many of these people are not going to be around.
The president says this is a cause for great concern, not just the timing, but the country will be losing some of its finest critical subject areas.
It is not just about the timing of the resignation, which would be just about when they want to start school and they might not have anybody to teach the kids. What it's also about are some critical areas: math, Spanish, English, sciences. Those are the areas that seem to have a scarcity overseas, and those people are going.
Wright says migration has been a trend in Jamaica for decades as a result of economic challenges. He's urging the government to improve the living conditions.
What we have done with the country is that we have raised expectations about owning homes, about owning material things. And what has not happened, we have not raised salaries to allow people to be able to afford those things. But we want them to stay here and do critical work. In this world, that kind of thing is not going to happen. And every single sector is going to suffer for that.
Numerous stakeholders, including former president of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Owen Speed, have called on the government to provide incentives and other solutions to keep teachers in the classroom. Justin Graham for CVM Live.
Okay, so there you have it. There's an expectation of a massive exodus from our schools. One estimate was about 400 teachers leaving before the start of the new school year. It's clear that it's, nobody has an accurate number because you're going to find out when teachers don't show up for school on Monday morning. I remember when I was going to St. Andrew Technical High School for my first day in school, we expected our physics teacher to show up. He never did. And I actually had to teach the class for several months. But let us see what persons are saying online. Here are some of the Facebook responses to that article. One person wrote, "The entire administration of the Ministry of Education does nothing but make a mockery of teachers. Teachers aren't important to them. You have to be in it to know it." Shaking my head. Teachers are treated with scant regard. You know how insulting it was to see Ruel Reed collect millions of dollars after stealing millions of dollars while bashing, undermining, and pressuring teachers? Do you know how offending it is to have a woman who knows nothing about education being in charge of the education sector and again come to prosecute and devalue teachers, all while helping to create future criminals because discipline is practically out of our hands? I can tell you that if Favour Williams were to sit in one of these classrooms for a day, dying with laughter, she would not make it. The other day, they paraded on the news how teachers will be receiving an increase in salary, and it was only $2,300. Remember, some are repaying student loans, majority may be paying rent, light bill, water bill, etc. It's a whole lot. I'm happy they're leaving. Jamaica is losing some brilliant teachers, but at the same time, a country that has no respect for their teachers don't deserve such brilliance. Disrespect plus undermining plus low salary plus overwork equal, and the person put a lot of question marks. Bravo, colleagues, the person continued. It's better to endure all of that with a sensible salary. And just wait, more resignations are coming. End of quote. And then they said, more teachers need to go. Oh, this is another person responding, by the way. More teachers need to go. It is very heartrending how everybody is struggling to make ends meet. If you have to leave, leave for better. The teachers got an increase of $2,000 plus for their salary. What can this really buy? The teachers are not valued. This money can't buy gas to take you to work for 2 days. And now they're leaving for better opportunities. We're crying. September, the minister will get the correct number of those who are gone. I support the teachers. At least when they convert a US dollar to Jamaican dollar, you'll be able to clear your loans in 3 years or less instead of 15. That's another comment on Facebook. Another person on Facebook says, the resignation letters have not come in as yet because the teachers want August pay. Stay woke, there'll be flooding in soon. Another Facebook respondent says, that is what you are telling the public. Where is the evidence? If it was such few teachers who left, why are principals on edge? Rubbish. Sweeping the dirt under the carpet as usual. When experienced teachers leave and young teachers are hired, the problem of expertise becomes an issue. The new teachers will not have the guidance of the old teachers, which may cause a problem. How about finding a solution to the problem instead of trying to convince yourself and the public that there is no problem? A solution, by the way, is not to pack the timetable of those teachers who chose to stay. End of quote. So that's another respondent saying, how they're going to deal with the problem, which is to pack the schedule of the four existing or remaining teachers. Another commenter says, this is what happens when you hire a businesswoman to manage the education system. Teachers can't do surgeries, doctors can't build houses, and Favel can't run school. This lady needs a transfer to a ministry where she can function. So these are a few of the comments from persons who are turned off, fed up, disenchanted, dissatisfied with the approach of the government, and who are equally concerned about the fact that more and more of our teachers are leaving. But why are the teachers leaving? Why are so many teachers leaving? Is this just happening today? No, this is not the first time. It has happened under all previous administrations. Jamaica has been a feeding trough for the rest of the world to come and get teachers from, simply because the government of today continues to fail to provide a Jamaica that is conducive to teachers. But let me take you on a little journey. I want you to go back in time a little bit and understand a portion of the genesis, where this is coming from. Why is it that we have such a problem today? It's not the Andrew Holness administration that created this problem. It is the JLP that created this problem, of which he's an integral part. It is the PNP that created this problem, of which Mark Golding is an integral part. And neither of those two gentlemen will tell you the truth about the cause of the problem. And even if they tell you the truth, they will not fix it. So, tonight, I want to make sure that I give you as much information as possible so that you know where this problem is coming from, at least a big part of it. So let's take a look now on a big part of the problem. Watch this.
Towards the end of the 1960s, when Jamaica was amongst the fastest growing economies in the world, we received what was up until that point the largest loan to a developing country granted by the World Bank, and we received that loan for educational purposes, to build schools and institutions that would have been able to receive the influx of young people seeking an educational opportunity in the years after independence. The loan did not achieve its purpose as intended. There were immense cost overruns, 100%, which contributed to the beginnings of our debt, and which, had we not had those overruns, we could have built 50 more schools. Reason? Partisan political award of contracts, not on the basis of merit, not on the basis of competence, but on the basis of party connection. And of course, the contractors gave back to the politicians, to the party, kickbacks in appreciation for this political corrupt behavior. Jamaica suffered then, and we continue to suffer now from this political corruption that we need to bring to an end.
Education is the key.
After 5 decades of independence, a lot of Jamaicans have begun to have doubts as to whether independence is a good thing. And when you look at the problems that Jamaica face, you can trace many of them to a weak or a non-performing education and training system. For me, there are two main objectives about an education and training system. And if it is effective, you'll see it in a productive labor force. Jamaica has one of the least productive labor forces in the Caribbean, much more in the world today. Out of a labor force of some 1.3, 1.4 million, over 900,000 have no training at all. Among the thousands of unemployed, many of them have been to secondary school for 4 years or more, and they don't have one piece of certification. The second objective about an education and training system, and if it is good, it does what I would say, build a more socially cohesive society. Everybody has the same learning experience for the first 11, 12 years. They are able to settle disputes without resorting to violence.
Ignorance, I mean, the simplest thing, they will probably blow out and take it out of proportion and act aggressive towards, while other persons with a more intellectual level will probably reason it out. As how we learn in the primary system, talk it out, don't fight it out, the conflict system.
Don't just fight for no reason sometimes. Legal is this thing escalate and get out in a big fight.
If you are educated, then you will know what to say, what to do, and take a stand. It's not because a politician put a money in your pocket, I put something in your pocket, you can say, yo, I turn a blind eye to certain things. You need to be more educated in doing stuff and some of the things that you're saying.
For the first time in 1953, elected Jamaicans became ministers of government. They started to have a bigger say. Up to that time, only 1% was enrolled in the high schools in the country. And so, the decade before independence, Jamaica was well on its way to establishing a first-rate education and training system. On the technical side, the College of Arts, Science and Technology was established. And the technical schools, Kingston Technical, Homewood Technical, Dental Technical, and then St. Elizabeth Technical, were all given a modern science curriculum, and graduates would feed into the College of Science, Arts and Technology. The effect was there. Within 3 years, Jamaicans were now staff in the bauxite industry. The Jamaican economy grew faster in the decade between 1953 and 1963 than the economy of any developing country in the world. And the prestige of Jamaica was such that in 1966, Jamaica was selected by the World Bank for a very special loan for education purposes. The amount of money is 9.5 million. But place that in context. For the 10 years, or for the period, more than 10 years, between 1953 and 1966, only 4.5 million was spent on secondary education. And you're now getting a loan of 9.5. And what this means is that in one shot, between 3 years, it should have been a 3-year program, 1966 to 1969, you would almost have doubled your capacity for secondary education. The way how we spent it gave education and training a setback from which it has never recovered. The government of the day called in Dr. Arthur Burt. He made one very, very important change to the method of hiring contractors. And that was, whereas before, there was an established panel of contractors, certified, who members of parliament could recommend from, but a panel at the Ministry of Education would have the final say in choosing. That was changed to allow each member of parliament to recommend the contractors who would build the schools in their constituencies. The program lasted not 3 years, but 6. And more importantly, the overrun on the primary school building program was 125%. And the overrun on the secondary school program, 100%. Which means for the money spent, the Jamaican taxpayer should have had twice as many schools. A new administration took government in 1972, and looking at the school building program and what had gone on, there was a big hue and cry for an investigation. In response to that hue and cry, a commission of inquiry was set up under which came to be known as the Da Costa Commission. Now, the findings of the Da Costa Commission should be read by every Jamaican. And the objective is not so much to remind the population of where guilt or blame is, but to try to make sure that this process is never, and these mistakes are never, ever repeated. Today, Jamaica has a debt of some $1.7 trillion. This debt has been accumulated from the time of the loan for education in 1966. If those monies had all been spent in a way to get value for money, not only would Jamaica be a fully developed country by now, but Jamaica would be able to export capital and assist other countries to develop as well. But we are now faced with this debt of 1.7 trillion, which should have carried us well on the way to economic development by providing useful infrastructure or facilities such as schools and clinics, to provide us with first-rate education and health services. And to the extent that those monies were spent without the Jamaican taxpayer getting value for money, you now have the money to pay back, but with a labor force that is far less able to produce the goods and services competitively to pay that money. And for this purpose, more so than anything else, I would recommend that every Jamaican read the report of the Da Costa Commission just to see how we wasted what I regard as the most important opportunity in the history of independent Jamaica to accelerate the process to provide a first-rate education and training system.
I left my big job in a corporation to run for MP in the last general election, but the people rejected me, yammed me out and heckled me and marked them X for the other MP. But my beloved party, they rescued me with a big government consultancy. Now I'm a consultant, a big government consultant. I have a contract, a big government contract. US dollars is what I get. Strictly cash. No bones check.
The consequences related to the corruption in the World Bank loan were that half the schools were built that could have been constructed. Not enough schools were there for the expanding student population, which led to severe overcrowding of classrooms, bad student performance, poor learning outcomes, and low productivity.
Okay, so I hope you've seen clearly what has happened between 1953 and 1963, how our politicians made decisions that would cripple Jamaica's economy for years to come by stealing some 50% of the money that was borrowed for schools. They left the Jamaican people with a huge debt. They enriched a few politicians and connected individuals and left the students, the children of Jamaicans, without the education system and the education infrastructure they needed in order to become the highly productive taxpayers of today, so that we'd have a much richer country and would have been able to pay teachers better and so on. But let me welcome to our program tonight um, Vincent Crawford, former candidate of the UIC and a strong member and supporter of the vision and mission of this movement. Mr. Crawford, welcome, sir. Can you hear me? Mr. Crawford, can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Crawford, can you hear us?
Greetings, Mr. Patterson. How are you doing today?
Wonderful.
Or
Fine,
tonight?
thank you. How are you doing?
You're not very coherent at this time. I'm not sure what's happening.
Okay. I can see you, but your video seems to be a bit weak. Let me check with
In and
our
out,
viewers.
you know.
Viewers, can you hear and see me clearly? Viewers, can you hear and see me
My
clearly?
internet is really bad.
Okay. All right. Well, give us your thoughts more quickly on what you just saw.
And what I just saw, it was the video was a little bit glitchy, right? But from what I've garnered from this is that we have we did have the chance of, you know, mobilizing our education system, and we pretty much missed out on that chance because of corruption and basically what do you call misallocation of funds that was meant for certain well, teaching or the education system was not used accordingly, right? So I've gotten that so far.
Yes. Now, you're a teacher, Mr. Crawford, and so you have a bit of experience. How long have you been a teacher now?
Yes, I am a teacher, but I don't wish to say where I'm actually a teacher. I've
No, but
been a
just how
teacher
long?
for. I used to work with a hard trust at first. I've been a teacher for about 5, 6 years, about 5 or 4 or 5, right?
And if you were to summarize the condition of the life of a teacher, how would you describe it? Being a teacher in Jamaica.
That is a very interesting question, my friend. The life of a teacher. Um, it's a bit of positive and negative, to be honest with you. But the only positives come from your ability to better your students' life and to see them actually graduate. It's like you know when you have a kid, you have a child in your house, and that child learns to walk, and you're so excited.
Yes.
That's the only positive. Um, that's actually the only positive in teaching. You see, other than that, you have many negatives. Like the salary is horrible. I can tell you that for the kind of work being done, the environment. I'm not sure if it's for every school, but the schools that have been, um, the environment is not so friendly, especially with the kind of generation that we have. Teachers, and I think I'm speaking for many teachers here. Many teachers don't feel safe, or some teachers. I know that sometimes I don't feel safe based on what I see happening on school ground, right? Not only that, the workload is just over the top. It forces you as an educator to focus on administrative duties. Yeah. So that mass focus that you should be placing on getting your students to learn, because in non-traditional high school, I've only been able to work in non-traditional high school. There are a mixture of students. I'm thinking that this is in traditional high schools as well, right? And some of these students literally have learning disabilities, right? And they need the extra help. As a teacher, you are not able to truly lend yourself to assisting these students because you are so caught up with meeting here, meeting there. You're so caught up with lesson plans and all these things, right? Which most times is not so impactful, you see, and not so relevant. I think I'm going to take some heat for this, right? And so the true attention that you could actually, that you need to, or the energy that you need to put into getting your students to learn, right? Sometimes it's really hard to get there. Yeah.
Right.
The class sessions, you have classrooms with like 30 odd students, 40 students, right? Imagine you have classrooms with 40 students, with many of them have different learning styles, and you try to implement like your differentiated learning skills, right? But at the
Did you
end of the day,
say
it's not just
40 students?
the
Did you say 40 students?
pardon me.
Did you say 40 students? A class of
You
40
have like
students?
30 students. I've seen classroom with 40 students before.
Wow. I mean, 30
Yes.
is already bad, but 40 is impossible,
Yeah, even
especially
when
when,
I was in
yeah, go ahead.
even when I was in school, I was in every now and then I have a class that have like 40 students. And I've had a class recently with 40 students when they had to try and their best to, pick out and not try to narrow down.
So now that 400 teachers are leaving the profession, possibly,
It's trouble,
uh,
my friend.
it's going to be, and by the way, in the 1960s, 70s, because they failed to build the amount of schools for which they borrowed money, you'd have had two problems. One, you'd have had less schools, but more students than you can manage. And then you'd also have less teaching jobs because you have less schools. So some teachers who would have qualified would not have a job. And then I remember in my time, we attended what we call shift system. So you had shift schools. So the
I
same
had that
school
as
had to
well.
have a morning shift and an evening shift in order to accommodate a large number of students. And then the classes now were like 30, 35 students to one teacher. And then you also had now the learning disabilities from bad homes or homes with all kinds of problems, nutritional problems, parenting
Right.
problems. Because many of the children in my age, my time, were born to teenagers. So you have a lot of teenage mothers who can't properly parent. So this was a recipe for disaster. But I want to share a few points about the school system and tell me if I understand it correctly. It's a little bit different from what you were saying, but I want to get your feedback on some of these. One of them is, in my opinion, looking at the situation, our leaders maintained a Eurocentric education system and a master slave mindset to produce wage slaves instead of thinkers, innovators, and creators. This, in my opinion, protects their interest as middlemen for the colonial masters, as opposed to them serving the interest of the citizens. Is, in your opinion as a teacher, is that a fair assessment?
Uh, it is it is to based on my philosophy and what I think education should be. I do think that it's somewhat of a fair assessment.
Okay, I want to check this one with you as well. They also controlled the teaching of our teachers and kept salaries low to ensure teachers would maintain the status quo or risk losing their jobs. So the whole system is designed to actually give students a kind of teacher, and also by low paying the teachers, you keep the teachers at a certain struggling level, and this ensures that the teachers help them to maintain the status quo of the kind of Jamaicans they want with the kind of mentality they want. Is that also a fair assessment?
I must agree with you that that is actually a very fair assessment. Because and this is based on my experience and my observation. Um, I do see teachers who would really like to have maybe even, you know, get out of the job, right? Or not be forced to conform to certain
Yeah.
conditions. And their excuse as to why they're there. Like on a daily basis, I see some teachers who just don't want to be there. You
Mm-hmm.
understand?
Right.
And their true reason is the fact that they are one, they're unable to save enough funds to actually get out of there.
Right.
Right? They
And
were
then
not educated
yeah.
business wise. Right.
Yeah.
They weren't educated business wise. Plus, even if they were educated business wise, it's very difficult
Mm-hmm.
for them to actually branch off into having a second job, why,
Yeah.
or a side hustle, because the profession is so time consuming. Yeah, if you're
Right.
not teaching, then you have to be preparing PowerPoint slides. I know I do, or you have to be doing lesson plans, or you have to be at a meeting. You
Okay.
understand?
Let me
So
get another
and
point
by the
then.
time you get home, you're tired.
You're
Go ahead.
exhausted, of course. Here's
Right.
another point. This is a little different. So listen to this one carefully. Because of our leaders of the last 78 years, because our leaders of the last 78 years did not value Africa, Africans, or African history, the students and teachers were taught to hate themselves and Africa while worshiping literally, figuratively, and spiritually the Europeans and their systems as a kind of gods or angels or superior in every way to the African race. Do you see that happening in your understanding of the education system in Jamaica?
My friend, this is what you've just explained is actually the entire Jamaica. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just enforced through the civil service job, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
employment. But it's actually the entire Jamaica. So I believe that you're because
Now, I wonder, go
even
ahead, go ahead.
just to stick up it, even the fact that the schools do not welcome other religions. I've
Yeah,
seen this, right?
yes, yes.
Schools are very close-minded. So you as a Muslim, right? I'm just saying,
Or
but I do
Rasta,
believe that
or
Muslims
Rasta,
should be
yeah.
respected just as much. You understand? Because it is a faith we're dealing with. Go ahead. What you say?
I said also like Rasta as
You
well.
said something.
I said Rasta as well, like Rasta as well.
Right, like Rasta and so forth. Right, right. Now you have a school system, and I'm not saying that you should take um any form of spirituality out of school. I value spirituality. You understand? So just to those who may believe that I am probably a atheist or something, yeah, I do believe that there is a very much a supreme being. You understand? Whether it's one or two, I'm not entirely sure, but I believe that something be there. You understand what I'm saying? However,
Yeah.
you have a system that it only focuses on Christianity, and not just that. There's an image, right? And I may be going down a road here that may be very troublesome for some. There's an image in every single person's mind. When I say Jesus Christ, what comes to your mind? It's gonna be a white image.
Yes, yes.
No one, anybody in Jamaica who's fair with themselves and honest with themselves, right? Anyone in Jamaica who's honest with themselves will actually say for sure that when I say Jesus Christ, it's that almanac image that
Yes.
comes up, right?
So
And the
you're
fact of
making
the
my
matter
point.
is,
Go ahead,
right,
yes.
they have not gone in depth enough actually educate children as it relates to us black people and our true spirituality. Yeah.
Yes.
We've pretty much just copied everything from the colonial system and model, right? And injected it into our children, right? And so we get the nice little conforming slaves just in a modern way when they leave high school, not even able to think for themselves. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, because we don't have financial education in institutions, which I believe that institutions should give have just at least one model that teach students how to manage money.
We're going to come to that later, but stick a pin. Okay. Excellent point, and I think you fully agree with all that I've said earlier on. I want to point out one last thing before we go to another clip that is going to probably shock some people. Schooling, in my opinion, does not mean the same thing as education.
Right.
A system can be a schooling system that is, in our case, it is focused on maintaining the old colonial order of a labor force. It is focused on creating mindless laborers, and thus it pushes memorization, recall, and passing exams for a job designed by our masters. It does not push the deep understanding and the abilities necessary to think, analyze, and design to produce or create solutions as an innovative individual human being. What are your thoughts on that?
I do agree with you. I agree with you there 100%. I always say when I graduated university, to those who I've given my image, my picture to, that's those little tiny pictures that you give to the special person. On the back of the picture, I wrote that, remember, education is not limited to academia, right? And I think that Jamaicans on a whole, and it probably other places, more than likely other places across the world, if you are not, pretty much we define people by their credentials, which is the piece of paper, and not necessarily their education. You understand? And in schools, I believe that we do need to start focusing on education rather than just teaching academics. You see what I'm saying? If you understand what I'm saying there.
Let me cut in and show you something now, which is going to speak to exactly what you're saying. Let's watch this. It's going to say exactly what you're saying right now.
Then I bumped African history. Look at the size of this book. It says here on the cover, a people without knowledge of their history is like a tree with roots. And there is a picture of a tree in the form of Africa without any roots. It has 31 pages. London Strategic Policy Unit, okay. And so the first page is acknowledgements, then it's forward, then it's introduction to second edition, introduction to first edition, and then we finally begin with the content, and then the last page, some general references on African history. So from page 9 to page 30, 21 pages. When I saw this for the first time, I was like, you gotta be kidding me, right? I mean, African history, the history of over 1,000 ethnic groups, fits 21 pages. Yay! What? So I thought, yeah, I'll do Q&A, but a bit later. But to celebrate 50,000 subscribers, it would be fair to share real reason why the content on the channel looks rather different from the content usually produced about Jamaica. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other, it's just different. I get a question from time to time in the comment section, how I know so much about Jamaica? And the answer is, I don't. I just know how to do the research and put it into a story. One of the reasons it's possible is because I'm a foreigner, so by default, I perceive Jamaica in a different way. But the main reason is not where I come from. It's the fact that I've had very unusual education. And you will see what I mean at the end of the video. So with this podcast episode, I'd like to discuss the truth about the education system. As you might know, I'm usually unbiased and refrain from personal opinion. Not so much in this video though, sorry. But I have an excuse. The current education system is bad. It's very bad on so many levels. And I'm not really talking about Jamaica. It's not just one particular country. It's a universal problem. Not like I'm the first one to see that. The audience of this channel have surely noticed that too. That's why I'd like to share my thoughts on this and looking forward to reading your ideas in the comment section.
Life can feel overwhelming, demanding, and mundane.
The main problem of the current education system is that it's heavily out of date. It was developed at the end of the 19th century, and just to remind you, in the year 1900, only 20% of the world population could read and write. 80% couldn't. Sure, there had been schools and universities from ancient times, but the access to them was only available to a certain group of people. African societies had writing systems from times when Europeans were still living in caves, but again, the knowledge was limited to a tiny group of people. And of course, it would have stayed that way if not for so-called Industrial Revolution. Turned out that uneducated people couldn't work well at factories, never mind becoming engineers. That's when the education system was developed, and it worked really well. Literacy now on the whole planet is almost 90%. So anyway, it was a wonderful thing. But the problem, it's not good enough anymore. Schools are still teaching our kids how to be factory workers as if digital revolution never happened. So the education system is out of date by like 50 years now. And that's just problem number one. The second problem when it comes to education is that all English-speaking countries have this Eurocentric model where we learn that Western European people were the greatest with all the empires, the Renaissance, the so-called Age of Exploration, revolutions, scientists, and so on. And then a book of African history is this big. But I find it really strange that people now complain about it. I mean, what did you expect? That education model was created initially by British people. It's not like there had been an education system in place and they replaced it. They created what they thought was relevant to them. They don't care about the history of Ghana in the same way as people of Ghana don't care about history of Malaysia. The difference is, of course, that people of Ghana don't push their agenda on Malaysian people, whereas with British education system, this problem is precisely the case. A part of the reason why I often see things differently is because I was exposed to a completely different story at school than most of my audience. In my childhood, I never learned that Western Europe was great. I was taught the opposite. I was born in Soviet Union and our school told us that Western European countries are evil colonizers or the capitalists. Do you know what we called Europe and Americas in the Soviet Union? The decaying West. Instead, as Soviet Union people, we learned the truth, that it is Russia that is the center of the universe. It is the greatest people that ever lived. All scientific progress was done by Russians. Sure, we learned about other scientists, artists, sportsmen, but they were nowhere as important as the Russian ones. Just to make sure it's clear, as a child, I learned a completely different type of nonsense than the nonsense you guys learned. So this agenda in education is problem number 2, which leads to the next one, the culture bubble. Everything at school is delivered with this attitude. This is us, our country, our people, our culture. We are the most important ones. And it's them, the relevant ones. Even in Jamaica, you learn at school only the things that are supposedly relevant to your country and get a fraction of the rest of the world. As a result, every human being has this distorted understanding of the world and themselves because they completely miss out on the context. And what's worse, we become programmed to do that in future. Every society believes that they are the ones who suffered the most and they are the ones who deserve the most for some reason. Well, and that reason is the culture bubble, because people never learn the context of what's happening in the rest of the world, the issues and achievements of other societies that are equally important. This could have been easily solved with self-education, if not for another problem. It's the mindset that people develop because of school education. It teaches us, once we finish school, that's it. Education is over. Go to work now. No need to study anymore. Even when people go to university, it's not for the sake of education, but for the sake of using that education to get a better job. So this concept that education has an end. You study hard, you reach the end, now you need to earn money. But education has no end. In fact, when you finish school, that's just the beginning of education. School is like a short introduction. And this is the last major problem I'd like to mention. The main reason to go to school is to learn how to learn. This is what schools should be about. It should teach us how to think. But instead, it teaches us what to think. That's why we study events, dates, how things happened, the contribution other people made, and so on. None of this is important in digital age. The problem before was the lack of information, while the problem now is too much information. So instead, schools should teach us the following skills. How to find the information we need when there is so much of it. What are the methods? How to verify the information we found and distinguish facts from opinions. How to analyze the evidence we found, and how to apply what we have found to different life situations. But schools don't usually teach us any of these skills. Some talented educators do. If you get lucky with a teacher who's passionate about education rather than just following the curriculum. And at the end of the day, excellent education that some children get is all because of some really good teachers. Not because of the education system. The education as it is designed now is not going to give us any of these skills. Instead, it gives us a few harmful skills. Here are a few examples to be aware of.
So, Mr. Crawford, as a teacher, do you disagree with anything she has said so far?
I've been here smiling. I do not disagree at all. In fact, she mentioned some things that I was actually looking to speak about. If you notice, they have taken civics out of schools, and our history is grossly eroded. You understand? And you know, she mentioned something about if you're lucky, you'll find the right teacher who will teach you how to think and not what to think, right? And I think I was lucky because there are three main classes that really impacted me in university. It was an ethics class that was taught by Dr. Shades. I can't forget his name. When he spoke about, he mentioned some stuff, I won't get into it. And then academic writing too, that taught me critical thinking skills. And my research methodology class. Those class, for some reason, they hit home with me. And they are pretty much the result. They are the ones that these teachers teaching these subjects or modules, they impacted me the most. You understand? They are the reason why I reason the way I do today. You see? So yeah, I do agree with her 100%. Another thing is, remember I was talking about financial education.
Yeah.
Schools do not teach you financial education. Like, they don't teach you how to manage money. So they only teach you what to think and say, okay, when you leave school, you're gonna get a job, right? And when you leave school, to get that job, you have to study again, and you go studying, trying to, with the end goal that you will, after you finish studying, you're gonna get a great job. When you look at the statistics, most people do not get jobs. You understand?
Well, they don't teach you. They teach you to look for a job, and they teach you to work for money. but they don't teach you to understand what money is, how money works, and how to make money work for you. So at the
Right,
end
I
of the
will get
day,
into that.
yeah. So at the end of the day, you spend your entire life running after money, but not understanding the system of money. And when you don't understand the system of money, everybody can fool you. I mean, the government can fool you with tell you some bunch of stuff and it fool you. The banker can fool you when you go to get a loan or a mortgage, and of course, the other companies that are doing anything can fool you. So the typical Jamaican, even the entrepreneurs, one of the biggest reasons why entrepreneurs fail is because they don't have money management skills and knowledge. They might have the skill to be a good carpenter or a good plumber, for example, but they can't manage money because they don't understand money. But I'm going to come to that more later. I want to share a little thought with you here. So what I've observed is that our school system, and most school systems, but ours in particular, given the context we're in, the graduate is not equipped to be a whole person. So the graduate doesn't understand how to optimize his or her mind, body, and personality. She or he does not leave school with a solid understanding of human behavior and how to build great social and business relationships. Nor does he or she understand the history and science of money and its relationship to the wars, the empires, the technologies, and the geopolitics we see around us today. Knowing this would have made it possible for them to overcome all of the kind of trickery that could be presented to them by politicians, the media, or wealthy elites. But because of the kind of education we have, for the most part, and this is going to sound really harsh, for the most part, we have educated dunces. People who might have 13 subjects, a master's degree, an undergraduate, a PhD, and for the most part, they really don't understand the world in which you're operating in, which is why the PNP and GLP gets away with so much of the foolishness that they do. If Jamaica had a really educated population, there's no way that these politicians would have remained in office because the people would have long ago risen up, understood what's going on, and changed the whole trajectory. What do you say to that?
I agree. I agree. And this is something that I saw when I was actually a kid. I realized that very persons who have the credentials, they're trying to reason with them on a level that is pretty much kind of outside of the box, but is where you really want to, right? And they cannot see it, for crying out loud. They
Even
can't
with the
see
PhD,
anything outside of the system that they were
even with the PhD,
programmed. Right,
even with the PhD, I find
right.
actually people without the PhD and without the masters and without the undergraduate have a greater chance of understanding some of what I'm
They
presenting
do.
than those with the PhD. The ones with the PhD are adamant that we can't do anything different from this. This is the way it is. Now, somebody just mentioned here, Mr. Info says it is not really fair to compare a country with 300 million people to a country with 3 million people. The money from taxing 300 million people cannot be compared to Jamaica's 3 million. Watch me now, Mr. Crawford. I'm going to demolish that idea tonight. I'm going to destroy that idea with basic facts because a lot of Jamaicans have this misconception that Jamaica is too small to succeed. We're too small to achieve greatness. We're too small to achieve the things that big countries achieve. Now, watch me on this, Mr. Crawford. I'm going to share with you right now the top 10 best countries in education. The top 10 best countries in education. And the best of the top 10 is the smallest country of the 10. And that country is smaller than Jamaica. That country is 1/15 the size of Jamaica. That country in 1965, the same time when we are about to squander 9.5 million US dollars, which was twice the amount we spent over 10 years on education. That country is going to take that small beginning where their GDP was equal to our GDP per capita, and they in 25 years became a first-class country And this person tell
Right.
me that we can't compare little Jamaica to a big country of 300 million because there's no way that we can succeed. But this country, which is 1/15 the size of Jamaica, they were able to do what this person is saying that we can't do. And I want to see that now. I want you to see that country. I'm going to share it with you now. You're going to see how a little country is number one in the world for education, being 1/15 our size, or was as poor as us in 1965, and most importantly, don't have 1/10 of the resources we had in
So this is
1965.
Singapore.
Yet still, I want you to see them, the top 10 countries, and this country is number one. I want you to, this country is number one. Watch it now.
The top 10 countries with the best education. Welcome to alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Hello and welcome to another informative video from alux.com. Today we're diving into the world of education and the top 10 countries with the best systems. Education has been in the world for centuries, of course. However, the first established school in the Americas was in 1635. But in all actuality, education can be dated all the way back to biblical times. As a general whole, people have a desire to learn. They want to know about politics, philosophy, literature, theater, and many other areas. The word education is derived as a process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, especially at a school or university. It seems our brains are thirsty and eager to learn. It's because of structured education in schools and universities that helps the world progressively move forward. If it weren't for an education system around the globe, then the development and progression of mankind would be at a standstill. Without further ado, let's dive in. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at alux. Number 10, New Zealand. New Zealand is known for many things: breathtaking scenery, Lord of the Rings films, food, and so much more. They're also on our top 10 list for the best education around the world. The budget for national education in New Zealand is $13.183 million. Their structures start with primary school, laying the foundations for further development of minds. For primary school, the school year varies between most of the schools, but in most cases, primary students attend from early February until mid-December. Then following primary comes the secondary or middle school or high school, which runs from the later part of January until late November or early December, attending primary and secondary schools. Of that number, 88% of them gain a secondary diploma. Number 9, close by we have Australia. Moving over to New Zealand's neighbor, we have our number 9 spot, Australia. School in Australia lasts for 13 years. It starts with preschool and then moves on to preparatory or kindergarten. From there, the school progresses to primary school. Secondary schools specialize in their specific area of education. The schools in Australia do not only educate their students, but they also prepare them for life. The budget of Australia's schools is an astounding $489 million. The first school in Australia was established in the 1830s. Number 8, the United States of America. Education in the States is made up of private, public, religious, and home schools. The annual budget of the Department of Education is $68 billion. The structuring for most schools is based on ages. Head Start with the ages of 3 to 4 years old. Preschool at the ages of 4 to 5. Next comes primary, where they start at 5 or 6 years old. Students then move through the years until they reach high school. After that, it's no longer required for students to go to school. In fact, if a child is still in school when they turn 18, they have the option to drop out without penalty. For those who continue through their high school, they have the option to continue on to college or university. Approximately 81.5 million people are enrolled in schools, with 81% gaining a secondary diploma. The number drops drastically to 30% of students finishing post-secondary or college. In 1823, a man by the name of Samuel Hale created the first normal school in Vermont with hopes of improving the quality of life. Number 7. Norway. Education in Norway dates all the way back to 1153. This is when the first cathedral schools were introduced. These schools were used years are spent playing games that are educational and learning things such as basic addition, the alphabet, and social structures. The second level is lower secondary school, from the ages of 13 to 16. Here the students finally begin to gain marks for their grades. Finally, there's the third level. Schools were deemed illegal. Norway has extremely high taxation levels. This is because the country heavily invests in education for the young minds of the country. It costs approximately $14,000 per student from primary all the way up to tertiary. Number 6. Denmark. The history of the Danish education system is fascinating. Its origins begin with the cathedral schools and monasteries, structured by the Roman Catholic Church during the early Middle Ages. Believe it or not, 7 of the schools developed in the 12th and 13th centuries are still in existence. Systems and education system by taxes. By going this route, education is free. There's also numerous private schools. Every 5 out of 6 children attend public school while the remaining attend private school. The schools typically are for children below the age of 16, and approximately 82% of students decide to continue on with their education. Tips to manage your time better. All you have to do is click in the top right corner to check it out. Number 5. Belgium. Once upon a time, there were disagreements between religious schools and state schools. Some believe that Catholic schools should not be funded by the government. In Belgium, the unemployment rate is only 3%, thanks, in large part, to tertiary or a college education. It goes on for 6 years and is broken up into 3 cycles. Secondary education is the next level. Children will move on to this level at the age of 12. This is where they choose their paths and what their area of interests are. Number 4. Switzerland. About 86% of Switzerland's population has gained a secondary education, the age ranging from 25 to 64 years old. The government estimates that $61,000 is spent on each student per year. This is well above the European average of $9,500. On
Okay, I'm not sure what happened there, but we kind of lost our connection on that little bit there. But the end result of it, and I really wanted you to see that the end result is that Singapore is listed as the #1 school system in the world. And since I'm on it, I'm going to actually just share with you a little bit about Singapore's education system right away, rather than skip that. I wanted to see actually where they said that Singapore is #1, but I'll come back to that. Take a look now at the at Singapore's school system itself. Let's watch this.
Singapore tops international leaderboards when it comes to learning.
So I'm here in a Singaporean tuition class and I'm about to find out whether I'm smarter than a 9-year-old Singaporean student. I can tell you I am not confident at all.
Okay, so 3/5 is the same as how many then?
For just $67, you can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera or...
This question would have many Australian adults scratching their heads. But for these Year 3 students, it's child's play.
Ready, set, go.
Finish.
Done. I feel like I've missed a fundamental, something fundamental's missing, and mine doesn't have as many boxes as the other kids.
The approach these kids are using is called modelling, and it's just one of the unique methods of learning built into their curriculum.
I'm getting a little bit of a taste of just how competitive the Singaporean education system is. I'm falling way behind my peers, and the pressure is real.
I'm here to find out exactly what it is about the Singaporean school system and the culture that generates such smart kids.
Hi, Lume.
Good to see you.
Janice Patterson, lovely to meet you.
I'm meeting one of the key architects of the mathematics curriculum for the Ministry of Education.
Singapore's developed a reputation as having the best education system in the world. How did that come about?
Well, education has always been allocated the second highest budget. With a small nation that has no agriculture, very small land, no natural resources, we can only invest on the mass of the size of the fish that is in the head, which is the brain.
I hope you guys heard that. So Singapore is a small country with no natural resources, and they recognize that the most important thing they could do is to educate or invest in the education of their people, recognizing that the human capital is bigger than any other resource. So Singapore is really a very barren piece of island. It has none of our resources that we have. Everything you see there came from the brains of their people, investing in their knowledge set and then converting that into outputs. And they did that being a small island the size of St. Thomas. And today, Singapore is the #1 country for education in the world. And just to put it in context, the average GDP per person in Singapore is $65,000 US, while in Jamaica, it ranges between $5,000 and $9,000 US. Singapore started out at $550 US per person in 1965. They were a colony of England, and in 1965, when they became an independent nation, their leaders made decisions that made Singapore a first-class country in 25 years. Our leaders had an advantage over Singapore's leaders. Our leaders had 18 years before independence where they were in what is called self-governance. So we had already elected JLP and PNP in the 18-year period prior to independence. So they had a head start, and they got to Jamaica from the colonial masters that included banana, sugar, coffee, bauxite, all kind of stuff in place that they could just take off. But their decision was not to invest in the education system as a priority, and not to invest in the mental development of our people as a priority. And as such, a small country with far less resources than us did this. And I want us to be very clear on what they have done. So Crawford, how's it going with you so far? Are you following? So Crawford, okay, he's frozen. So we'll continue. Let's continue with our little instruction set here.
A program of educational expansion with its accent on science and technology is vital to maintain and improve the living standards of Singapore.
Founding father Lee Kuan Yew transformed the country from poverty to prosperous single generation by focusing on its human resources. Lou May says the government has always invested heavily in education.
Right from decolonization days in the 60s, we need to build people with skills who can work in the factories, who can work in the offices, and a large part of investment has been put into education.
It's always been about long-term social and economic planning.
As educators, we are not educating our children for today, not for tomorrow. We are educating them for the future economy in 20 years' time. And that's pretty much what the Ministry of Education has to do often, to look into the crystal ball to what is necessary and what is needed for the future generation.
I'm on my way to a class where the focus is very much on learning for the future.
It's Saturday morning here in Singapore, and while most Aussie kids might be hitting the sporting fields, these 4-year-olds are attending robotics class.
The little ones experience maths through play.
It selects either this area or this area.
But the older kids are here expanding their maths comprehension in preparation for the big national exam that takes place at the end of Year 6, called the PSLEs.
How do you feel about coming here on a Saturday morning?
I'm usually quite excited to come, as I will want to do a lot of building and programming.
So tracking the line, first line, second line.
A student's PSLE score determines which secondary school they'll go into. High scorers qualify for the top academic schools, while low scorers find themselves in schools geared towards vocational training. This system of streaming can put a lot of pressure on kids and their families.
Sir Crawford, do you find that as a teacher in Jamaica, you have the tools in the classroom to do like what you just saw here? Do you have the supplies, the tools, the technology, the methodology being passed on to you and taught to you to be able to help our students to approach learning the way you just described, and to therefore have them be fully in tune with the modern environment in which we live today? Do you have that in your school today?
That is not a model that we have today. I wanted to respond just briefly to what the individual has said. I think he or she was mentioning that they're not talking about the education system overall. They're talking about the taxing of all the people and whatnot. And to sum up all of that money to actually provide the necessary salary for teachers. And I am thinking that this person, they have missed the many reports of corruption in this country. Jamaica is very corrupt, right, based on my observation, and that's not just from me. That's actually news reports coming out, right? I do believe that if funds are allotted properly in Jamaica, I do believe that civil servant workers will be able to receive fair enough salary when they can actually save from that and retire with something.
Let me say something to that, Mr. Crawford, that I don't think the person who is responding fully understand, and I want to explain. We don't have a problem paying teachers the right salary. In fact, we don't have a problem in Jamaica at all paying anybody the right salary. The problem we have is that our system of governance does not allow us to be as productive as we need to be able to pay the amount we need to pay right across the board, whether in the public sector or the private sector. Let's take the sector of education, since that's the topic. How do you pay teachers well? You pay teachers well by, one, making sure that the teachers are trained well, so that because of their training, they're going to be able to impart great knowledge and skills to their pupils. You also ensure that you provide the tools for them to be able to do that with. So for example, the science lab has to have the facilities so that the teachers can teach the principles of science properly. The chemistry lab must have the tools for chemistry, the physics lab, the tools for physics, the bio lab, the tools for bio, the teachers who teach mathematics, the tools to teach math not just as a theoretical subject, but a subject that is related to the world around you so you can understand how to apply that knowledge, and so on. So if you don't have that, if you don't have teachers and equipment and the school environment designed to bring out the best in your students, then you will not have students who can then produce the output that will generate the income to pay the teachers. So what Jamaica did in the 1960s, we borrowed the money to be able to do that. But then we thieved the money and didn't do that. So Jamaica get deeper into a hole because over the years you're borrowing money, right? But the money you're borrowing isn't increasing our capacity to produce and increasing our productivity and increasing the quality of our output so that the inflows from those outputs would raise our economic standard so we can build. So we hire the teachers, we cripple them with low salaries, we cripple them with insufficient supplies and equipment, we cripple them with insufficient schools, so class sizes are improperly balanced, and then now the output that is created, 70% of that output is of a low quality, the other 30%, 80% of that is going to migrate to foreign, and so the remainder that you have left in the country of the higher producing caliber are too small to carry the burden now of the overall country. And while they're trying to carry that burden, they are impeded by bad roads, which makes them inefficient to go about their business. They're impeded by corrupt police services, which further impedes them. They're impeded by a banking system that is not designed to support them but to extort them. And they're impeded by a political system that teaches foolishness and misdirect people and make policy decisions that further cripples the country with more debt and so on. So all of these things are wrapped up into making sure that Jamaica cannot be what it should be, because from the very top, the leadership, by the way, when I talk about leadership, I want you to realize that this begins, for example, in 1954 and 62, where the vast majority of Jamaicans could not read and write in 1954, let alone to talk about governance. In 1962, many were still not educated. So the few leaders we had, like a Norman Manley, who was a lawyer, who was trained in England and come back, and a Edward Seaga, who was well educated from an academic standpoint, and a Hugh Shearer, and all these people, and a P.J. Patterson, Queen's Counsel. So you had all these bright people on paper, bright people who should have been able to say, let us love and help our people. We know that most of them can't read. We know that most of them can't write. We know that they're disadvantaged. Let us put in place a system and structure that is going to help them to learn and build them up. Instead, they create a system whereby, because of their desire to just get power at all costs, they would gradually steal the money over and over and over and pack up this debt on us and sink our country. Is that your understanding, Mr. Crawford?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Because that is exactly what's happening and what has happened.
Yeah. So we have a serious problem. And when I look at what Singapore has done, and I know many persons by now should be tired of hearing me speak about Singapore, but I choose Singapore.
No, they are a great model.
Yeah.
They are.
And everybody knows in business, right? You need to establish. For example, if I were to come and tell Jamaica, the UIC is going to achieve all of these things, they're going to say to me, where has it been done before? How you know you can do that? Well, for me, I don't think Singaporeans are brighter than me in terms of the leadership. I don't think Lee Kuan Yew has greater abilities than me or you or anybody else to think and design and create. Now, of course, he would have applied himself better than most of us. He took the time because he's clearly not an ordinary leader. He was not a leader that was focused on power at all costs. His focus was on development of his country at all costs, while our leaders are focused on power. Our leaders get excited when they become prime ministers. So they're like, oh, I'm the first female prime minister, or the first black prime minister, or the youngest prime minister. Their focus is on the title and the position, while the Lee Kuan Yew kind of leadership is focused on how do I get my country to the level whereby our people can come out of the gutters and can start enjoying a decent life. So I observed a few things. And I want to talk now, Mr. Crawford, about some UIC solutions and get your feedback on them. So the UIC is more than, we believe, our solution is more than just learning critical thinking skills. That is now the quick thing to say, critical thinking. You know, we're more than that. Our model of education is about embracing good governance for yourself as an individual, good governance for your country, and good governance for the world by loving and protecting the right to be a free man or woman. This means having full dominion over your right to life, liberty, and property, and never using force or fraud to take the life, liberty, or property of others. Why does the UIC begin with this principle? If you don't have a proper philosophical foundation for your country, the country doesn't know what it's working towards, what is it trying to build. So the UIC philosophy is we want to make sure every single individual understands that they have a right to be free and they have a role to be responsible. And when you combine that freedom with that responsibility, you can create gigantic outcomes of productivity, production, creation, innovation, and you can see the sky as the limit. You know, you can achieve greatness, the kind of greatness that Marcus Garvey was talking about. What are your thoughts on that?
I do support the UIC's philosophy. Mission, vision, values, goals. I do not actively take part in things that I don't 100% support. And the what's that called? The manifesto is wonderfully written. Achieving these may be a little bit difficult, but I do it is possible, and with dedication and focus. You understand? And it does take a leader who really cares about the people. You understand? Who cares about his country. You understand? And know that he will represent the people in a fair and honest way. And all these things are possible.
Yeah, another part of the UIC solution is that we want an education system that promotes variety instead of a monolithic one. I mean, I know we're all used to the monolithic education where, everything is the same for everybody. If it's standardized, you go through the same thing. All students should be forced through the same strainer. We believe that parents must have the most say with the aid of course, independent advisors. There should be various schools with different methodologies and core emphasis. A government must provide a core sample, but let the market otherwise work to deliver what we need and want to succeed. And what I mean by that is, just imagine a Jamaica where everybody has the possibility to choose an option that works best for them and their children. So the Rastafarian wouldn't be forced to go to a Christian school. The Muslim wouldn't be forced to go to a Christian school. The Christian wouldn't be forced to learn things that the parents don't want them to learn, like you get in a monolithic system. In a monolithic system, the government gets to dictate what students learn, as opposed to support and facilitate and encourage and provide the tools for those who are skilled in academics to build core programs and test different techniques and show us how they work relative to each other. So we do not want a monolithic school system. We want a diverse school system, and one that is built on the solid principles of promoting individual liberty and personal responsibility, with an overarching emphasis on ensuring our African children understand their African heritage and realize that, being of African descent is a badge of honor, and to make sure that is brought out into the curriculum, but not by force, but by encouragement and facilitation, and building bridges in terms of letting the child understand themselves fully, self-constitution, self-ownership, understanding how to build a good relationship with others, family-wise, business-wise, social-wise, and understanding how markets work, how money works, how the economy works, that, when they step out of school, they're not blind. They understand the world around them and have a full connection with it and can make meaningful decisions on a daily basis. What do you think of that?
That's an excellent point, sir. The standardized system has pretty much crippled a lot of youths. As an educator in the classroom, I've seen youths who are very much of many different things, right? It's a variety of skills in one classroom having to be subjected to the same standard. And the funny thing is, I never went to teachers college, but I did my postgrad in teaching, right? And we were taught about Robert the Gardner's multiple intelligence model, right? Which pretty much it asserts that no, you don't really, kids are different, people are different, right? And our ability to learn, we learn in different ways, right? But yet we teach this, and we have classrooms wherein we only support differentiated learning. However, as it relates to catering to the skills, the natural abilities of each student, we don't do that. And that leave a lot of students feeling out of place. And that is the truth. You see?
Absolutely.
And a lot of these students, they graduate without purpose. You understand? A lot of these students you see, I can tell you that I did graduate without purpose. I really did. When I left high school, I felt like even today, I feel like I'm still a little bit out of place, because maybe I should have chosen like programming or something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right.
But
So you
no
weren't
one was.
exposed enough.
The
You weren't
system,
exposed enough to make a decision with confidence.
right? The system never lent itself for me to be able to assess myself properly and know about myself, which goes back to what you said earlier, right? To develop a firm sense of self and being able to function socially and all those good things, right?
Yeah.
So I would be able to make an informed decision as to what I would like to do. You understand? If we had this on a mass scale for all students in all schools, Jamaica would be extremely productive, which would result in
Somebody's challenging
increasing
us.
our GDP significantly.
Alex Baxter is challenging the thought. He says the current system allows everyone to live peacefully, and Christian values are shared by the aforementioned religions. So separating
That
them
is not
makes no
true.
sense. And as such, would bring out segregation. You see, it's the big misunderstanding, that they've taught us not to respect each other, not to have an open mind in terms of being tolerant, being respectful of other people's choices. And I think UIC wants to change that. We really want a Jamaica where we learn to respect the choices of everyone, as long as those choices does not include using force or fraud to take away somebody's life, their liberty, or their property. Now,
I would like
there's
to
no way you can
say
tell me.
something.
Say, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, sorry to cut you, sir.
Yeah,
Just
go ahead.
using facts here, right? Because there's a recent assessment that came out. If it's the case that Jamaica, the current system or the current model, right,
Yeah.
allow for us to live peacefully, why is Jamaica so violent?
we're the most violent. We're one of
We
the
are
most
among the
violent
most
countries.
violent countries globally.
We have so many churches. We have so many churches.
We should be the most peaceful since we have so many churches per capita.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Come on, man.
So
That's
so
common
that
sense.
is nonsense. I mean, I know it sounds nice, and I know the idea. I know where Alex is coming from. It's an idea that they've foisted upon us, but it's not right. The
We are not
best
taught to
country.
respect each other's beliefs or each other's freedom, or
Yeah, we must encourage the Christian to respect the Muslim. As a matter of fact, what we're doing, we're removing religion as a factor in you being able to get an education. Religion must not be a factor. Religion must be a choice, a personal choice. It must not be an issue. And I love the way Lee Kuan Yew has managed it in his country, because Singapore used to be a very religious, contentious country. They used to fight over religion. They fought over language, and they fought over ethnicity and so on, race. And he was able to really diffuse all of that by allowing people to embrace and live their choices. So, for example, in Singapore, they had 4 different language groups. And what Lee Kuan Yew did was, it was so wise. Instead of making any one of the 4 languages the national language, he made English the common language and made it so that every child learns 2 languages. Whichever language their parents want them to learn, and English as a common language between them so they could speak to each other and so on. And because of that, everybody in Singapore is multilingual, and they work well together, and it got rid of all the religious faction wars, because you were no longer going to use religion as a basis to propel yourself through life. Religion was just your personal choice. It was not a factor in whether you get hired or whether you're a part of society or not. And so he diffused all of that. The UIC wants to achieve something even greater than that. They want to get people to the level where they understand that they must respect the rights of everyone else. The right to your life, the right to your liberty, and the right to your property. So nobody must think that they or government must use force or fraud to take something that belongs to anybody else. There must be respect for everyone's fundamental rights. But my next point, so earlier on I talked about the UIC solution to make school relevant to real life, engaging students in working the way the real world works early in life, emphasizing teamwork, real problem solving, having an apprenticeship program, allowing students to experiment and learn by doing, engaging in innovation, questioning everything with a view to understanding and improving things continuously. So continuous learning, continuous development. Now, the UIC measures education success different from what we've been taught. The way we measure the success of education, the way to measure the effectiveness of an education system is by the productivity and prosperity of its people. Jamaica is very unproductive because it has a very bad system of education, believe it or not. Because of how poor our education system is, that affects our productivity, it affects our export, it affects our earnings, and it pulls down the country. Singapore is very, very productive because it has the world's best education system right now. And we in the UIC are going to even improve on that system further. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Crawford?
Yeah, as I mentioned, based on my knowledge, my scope of knowledge is not significantly wide, but it's sufficient. And based on the what I've read so far as it relates to the UIC's plan, and when I compare it to what Singapore has, I do believe that if we even come close, it would be progress.
Yeah,
See?
thank
Yeah.
you. I mean, we realize that there's that right now we're not getting value for money. Could you believe that Singapore spends 3% of GDP on education, while Jamaica spends 6% of GDP on education? But they get much better results because the money goes into teachers, into teaching, and into students. and in a way that makes their citizens more productive and thus more prosperous. So in other words, we are spending twice as much per capita on education than Singapore, but they're getting 100 times more results than we're getting, simply because our system is wrong and the spending, much of it is also being stolen. You saw how much rural aid was taking out, right? You know how that was going.
So that was annoying.
because,
That was very annoying. Very.
yeah. So not because they spend the money, need it when where it should have gone. So the
And
money
a
is
lot of
spent.
teachers never got paid,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so clearly Jamaica is just not getting it right on so many levels. Now, the UIC will make education for teachers and students, right? The way to live a prosperous life again. Right now, getting an education in Jamaica is not the best way for you to earn a good living, believe it or not. So while some students are quitting school in favor of a career in lottery scamming, many teachers are migrating to escape the low standard of living of a career in teaching. Being a teacher should make you a top-notch person in society, and that's what Singapore has done. They have made sure that their teachers are among the best paid in the country. They're on par with senior executives in major private sector organizations. That's what they do in Singapore. They make sure that their teachers are well trained, well paid, and thus highly respected in their society, highly respected by the students. Now, when you go into a class as a student and your teacher look like them and suffer, you don't have the respect for them. When you go outside and see the teacher from the road and say, I'm a teacher that, and him going to teach me,
Yeah.
and him going to teach me,
Yeah.
look how him suffer. Look how she has suffer. And if they see your house, you say, I dare the teacher link? No, sir. Me not, no man, me not buy that. And so what they're doing, the students have lost respect for teachers because the government has no respect for teachers. You understand me? The government has no respect for teachers. None at all. None. You can see it in even the way they talk to teachers and talk about teachers. They have no respect. The amount teachers are paid shows they have no respect. The lifestyle of a teacher shows they have no respect. And so the society has less respect for teachers. Even teachers have less respect for themselves. And when you have a teacher teaching a student and does not respect themselves, does not feel highly regarded by themselves, not highly regarded by their community, not highly regarded by their students, all of that affects the outcome of the industry. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong at all. In fact, the exact statements you made a while ago, I was recently on the Ken Salmon, that's Hot Wax, show on radio, and this is actually a similar topic. It's actually a topic that we were vetting, and you recognize that when a student is in a classroom and you as a teacher, you're supposed to be teaching, you're supposed to be helping the student to find a way in society, right? Through education so that they may become wealthy, quote unquote, right? And that student look at you and see you driving a little jalopy because they can't afford it. Yeah. Or your student loan is so high that and plus you have to purchase a little car, right? And that loan is so high to the point you have to be taking your lunch to school. Yeah. Students see you as an effective role model, right? In the classroom. Okay.
Exactly.
And therefore, imparting knowledge to students will be difficult. You understand? Because everybody wants to look up to somebody. Now, I want to answer a question that someone posted. That why is it that over 170 thousand teachers are actually leaving? Do you see that comment?
Yes.
I don't know
Less than
exactly.
7 teachers. Yeah.
Right. And it's very clear. Teachers are suffering. Yeah. Teachers are not walking and begging and you know, on the roadside sitting down, but they're struggling to make ends meet. Yeah? And teachers are actually look at teachers who are retired and realizing that they have nothing.
Nothing.
They are paying off which they have to be paying for their entire life. And the fact of the matter is, more men are leaving the profession because you see, when a woman, right? I know that there are some very beautiful independent women around, but the fact of the matter is, when a woman um, is paired up, the man is expected to remove some level of, it's never exactly 50. If it's either like 60-40 or something, you understand? The man carries most of the load. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? And when you check it out, even some women, you have a lot of women who are single parents who have to be taking care of kids. Right? Both men and women are leaving. The ones who are more subjected to the position are the ones who, as you mentioned before, the system have actually kept them at a scrappy level, basically, right? So they're just grabbing crumbs, right, hoping to work out, and they cannot afford to leave their job.
No, in fact, many
so some
teachers,
of them even take a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see?
But many teachers,
So why are teachers
have
leaving?
Yeah.
You're delaying.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
I was
let
saying
me finish my thought.
Sure, go
Right?
ahead.
Why are teachers leaving? Teachers are not pay off their student loan. They're not able to pay off their car loan. Right? The currency in Jamaica is very much not so good today. Right? The classroom environment is not a place that feels safe anymore. Right? Teachers are not respected. Right? And there's a lack of resources in the classroom. And so a lot of teachers are waking up, realizing that they need that currency. If they're ever going to live a better life, they have to migrate. And I close there.
Plain and simple. Plain and simple. The teacher has to make a decision that is going to be in the best interest of their family. And there's no point for a teacher to sit here in Jamaica and waste away their young years. You stay in the classroom from, let's say you start at 25, and you spend the next 25 years in the classroom, and you get to 50, and you realize that at 50 years old, you are now in a financial bind, right? You spend most of those years paying off loans, and by the time you finish paying off the loans, you're absolutely broke, and the pension you're going to get will not be sufficient. You could not have saved and invested for your retirement years. So basically, it's hopeless. And the government is asking you now to be patriotic. There's no patriotism there. What are you going to be patriotic about?
No patriotism
Can't put food on the table. Yeah, the patriotism can't put food on the table. Patriotism can't pay for your children's university education.
Thank you. Thank you.
Patriotism doesn't pay off your mortgage. Patriotism doesn't pay off your vehicle. Patriotism doesn't ensure that when you retire, you have a reasonable income. So the teachers are leaving, and more are going to leave. Now, here's the way we're going to have to stem that, right? The UIC plans to take politics out of education with a truly public system. We have to look at the political appointment of administrators and board members and chairpersons. These political appointments, correct me if I'm wrong, of administrators, board members, and chairpersons lead to an unhealthy environment for teachers on top of their already stressful financial position, pushing more and more of them away from the profession. Many teachers must do side jobs in order to get extra money to be able to make ends meet. And as a result of that, they lose the respect of students, parents, and the community. And the only way to fix that is for us to switch to a model of governance that allows us to build an education system where teachers can be paid adequately and can be once again respected by their peers, their students, the parents, the community, and the country at large. Am I not correct, Mr. Crawford?
You're very correct. You're very correct.
Yeah. And so it's imperative that if we want change in Jamaica, that we, and teachers, I'm speaking to teachers in particular, teachers, if you want change in Jamaica, you're going to have to do what it takes. Just, what you call it now, going on strike and hoping for negotiations that's going to give you 2 or 3%, not gonna work. I'm calling upon all teachers, wherever you are, if you want the changes that we're talking about, go to our website today, uicjamaica.com, join, volunteer, and from your meager salaries, donate and get active. We, the UIC, do not and will not get funding from the PSOJ oligarchy. They're committed to funding the two sides of the same equation to keep the system just the way it is. The UIC is 100% depending on you to fund our work and our candidates so that we can represent you and build the Jamaica that you want. So if you're abroad or you're here in Jamaica, join hands with me in the UIC so that we can take our country and do as well or better than Singapore. We can do it, we must do it, we have the capacity, we're not duncer than anybody else. When our teachers go abroad, look how well they do. When any Jamaican, almost any, there are a few of us that are worthless, but when most of us go abroad, Mr. Crawford, look how well we do when we go over there. I went over there when I was 23 years old, and I could come back to my country at 40 years old because I was able to access the opportunities that allowed me to build wealth at a much faster rate. We can do it here, but we need a government, we need a leader with the mettle of Lee Kuan Yew, with the vision that he used to create Singapore. We need leadership in Jamaica with a similar vision and a stronger commitment to make sure we have that Jamaica. And the time is now. Those are my final words, sir. What are yours?
I made a mistake by looking into the comments, and it just pulls out every single thought, because it's just amazing the way persons are really thinking. I don't mean to insult anybody. Someone mentioned about teachers in the United States, they are not wealthy. Nobody said anything about them being wealthy. The fact of the matter is they are living better than they were actually living in Jamaica. That is the truth. The fact of the matter is they're able to pay off their student loans. Yeah. The fact of the matter is they're able to at least go ahead.
Sorry to butt in. I just want to, but you mentioned it, and I just want to comment on it. A teacher in the USA every week or month is able to buy a full basket of grocery at the supermarket. No matter what them tell you, no matter the news yesterday where they say whatever I want, they can buy a full basket of grocery with all that their family needs. Their refrigerator is always full unless they don't want it to be full. They live in a house that has a decent set of sofa, a decent, very decent washroom, a decent bedroom, a decent living room. They drive a decent car. They have no worries at all about their child being able to get a decent education to the level that they want. So let us not even go there. The bottom line is the reason why teachers are leaving Jamaica is because what they're going to is going to be 100 times better than what they're leaving here in Jamaica. Yes, they're going to suffer cold. Yes, they might suffer racism. Yes, they might suffer all kind of challenges in the classroom and in the industry. But one thing you're not going to suffer is the kind of life they're living here in Jamaica, the substandard kind of life, the fear for them life, even, generally speaking, they will be in a better environment. And so I'm not encouraging teachers to leave. I just want to know that the facts are the facts. Let us stop pretending and let us stop giving cover to bad governance. It's bad and we need to fight against it. We need to stop it. We need to want better for our teachers. But anyways, Mr. Crawford, you have the last word, sir.
Yes, I appreciate you inviting me, sir. And some of the so far the conversation that we've had is very relevant. You see, and I really hope that persons share this live so that it may reach other persons' ears. The fact of the matter is the UIC has a plan, and at this point, there's no change without new governance. You see, you never know.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mr. Crawford. Have a good night. Thanks to all of you who have been on. Please like, comment, and share, and subscribe. If you have not yet subscribed to UIC Limited TV or our various platforms, Facebook, Twitter, please do so because we're depending on you. Right now, on Facebook, they're trying to shut us down. On regular media, we don't get a lot of coverage. So it's you. You're the ones who are going to carry the message to everybody else. So we're depending on you. Thanks again. Have a good night and talk to you soon.